Good morning, I'm Michael from Monster Gaming, and if you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. So today I'm going to do my top 10 action figures of all time. They are all personal to me, and I've made my choices through nostalgia reasons, playability, how much I played with them when I was a kid, and actually a little bit the rule of cool. For me, they were the coolest toys that I had when I was a kid growing up in the 80s. So before I start my top 10, I'm just going to do two honourable mentions right here at the start. And they are the original Chewbacca and Jawa from the original Kenner Star Wars line. These were the very first two action figures my parents ever gave me, and I absolutely loved them to pieces. I still have their guns. These are my original ones, they're not replacements. And let's face it, Chewbacca was the coolest dog that anybody could ever want to have with them as a like a sidekick. Obviously I know he's a Wookiee, but Chewbacca was just the coolest, and I loved my little Jawa in his little cape all those years ago. My two first ever action figures, and I still have them to this day. But number 10, you might think, being called Moat Monster Gaming, that the one Thundercat on my list would in fact be the Astral Moat Monster, but it's not. My number 10 all-time favourite action figure is actually desiccated old Mum-Ra, the Ever Living. Now, this was a mail-away figure. I remember my mum mailing it away, I don't know, like a couple of quid, and getting it for me. Came in a little jiffy bag. But I just thought this guy was super cool at the time. Now, I had, reach for him, I already had this Mum-Ra, but actually I liked playing with this one. This one was just so much cooler for me, and over the years I've acquired like 5 or 6 of them. Just whenever you buy a lot of Thundercat figures, you generally tend to get an old wizened Mum-Ra in the mix as well. So I've ended up with loads of them, and I've given them to the kids. But for me, the most amusing thing is they think it looks like Nana. So there you go, Mum-Ra. Apparently you are the spitting image to Nana. Whenever they used to pick the toy up as a kid, they used to go, oh, it's Nana, it's Nana. So I did like playing with it as a kid, but for me, I think it's more amusing that they think it looks like my mother-in-law. So let's put that one back. And then coming in at number 9, I have Mail Fraud. Now, this is a, hold up the card, this is a Ghostbusters figure. This is a haunted human, and it's from the second wave of figures that they brought out. And it looks like a regular postman. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't look anything like Postman Pat, but it looks like a regular postman. But transforming it, pull its tummy apart, and there we go. The pockets turn into eyes, and in the middle we have teeth. I mean, to me it always reminded me a little bit like something out of Inferno, one of the 80s X-Men stories. But I do like how the tie becomes its nose. Now, I didn't have it originally. It took me a couple of years to pick up. One of my friends at school had it, and I just thought, man, that is so much cooler than Peter and Egon and Ray and Winston. I want this guy. So I eventually pleaded with my parents, and they bought it for me. And he pretty much just went on all the adventures. He went on the adventures with the Ghostbusters, and then when they least expected it, he would turn and attempt to slaughter them. But yeah, Mail Fraud, really cool. All of the haunted humans were good, but definitely my favourite, and definitely my favourite Ghostbusters figure at the time. Then coming in at number 7 and 8, technically it's kind of like there's 3 figures here, not 2. These are Mutagen Man from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or to me, Hero Turtles, and Muckman and Joe Eyeball. And I can't decide which one's cooler because they're both absolutely crazy cool. So I've done them both together. I just thought it was easier. Now, I have their cards here. Here's Mutagen Man's card, And on it that we learn that it's a non-stop mutating monster with a mutagen machine gun, gooey garbage, life support system, and a skull plug. So birthplace Krang's lab. And I just think this guy is super cool. So we have this kind of neat purple pipe on the back, runs from the head to kind of like some sort of oxygen tank, but inside, suspended in a see-through body, we just have organs. We just have organs sitting there for anybody to see. Does have two eyes. One eye is kind of like looking into its arm, the other eye is looking straight out. I mean, it's a really, really nice action figure. Now, I liked pretty much all the Turtles figures. I only ever got the first 3 or 4 waves because I sort of grew out of it. But like this was when they really started to get absolutely crazy. And this is still my favourite wave of figures they did that included this guy, Pizza Face, Muckman and Joe Eyeball. But the other thing is you could take the top off, which I'm actually not going to do. You could take the top off and you could fill it with water, because in this little jar here, as well as a ninja throwing star, you could get these little pieces that you could put inside and they'd float around. So you'd have these little bits of, I don't know, they're like machinery, like organs. Yeah, there's a spanner. So you could have them floating around inside Mutagen Man. And then also very cool, here we have Muckman, and at the back we have Joe Eyeball. Now originally he's with the villains on his card, but actually I'm pretty sure from both the comic and some of the cartoons, later ones, that I believe he became one of the good guys. Now I really like the fact that he's got a peg on his nose to avoid his own stench. On the top we have a banana, but this comes off. This comes off, and then we can actually pour ooze into his head, so it comes drooling out of his mouth. And then also, let's take, there's Joe Eyeball, funny little creature. You could fill the garbage can, which actually has got loads and loads of detail. Look, it's got like a skeleton fish. It's got slime on it. You could fill the garbage can, which goes in the back, and you could fill that with slime, and then slime would ooze out of his belly. But again, how amazing is this figure? We've got frog on it. We've got manhole cover like attached to the foot. We've got flies, don't know how well we can see that, there's a fly there twisting it, but yeah, worms in the arms. So I quite like the Toxic Avengers figures. I grew to like them anyway, but this guy for me is the best sludgy, toxic-y, swampy monster, even better than Swamp Thing, that you can get. This figure is amazing, as is his little helper, as is this figure here with all sorts of clawed foot, robot foot, and like weird bits of muscle showing. And to me, these were the best turtle figures they ever made. Now, in at number 6, we have Modulock. Now, here's one boxed. There's Modulock. Let's put them there. Grab the comics. So, Modulock is a Horde villain. He's one of the He-Man baddies from Masters of the Universe. And basically, it's like a kit that comes with all these parts, and you can put Modulock together to make over 1,000 different monsters. Now, to be fair, most of these monsters actually look terrible when you make them, and the original Modulock form is probably the better. So this is Modulock made up to look like what he probably should most look like. But the best thing about Modulock is, other than you can take him apart and build him into different shapes, you can, you know, stick arms on head, heads on shoulders. It's a bit like John Carpenter's The Thing. You can kind of make it into whatever you want it to be. And even the gun detaches into 2 separate pieces. So you can have it as 2. Oh, let's turn that around. you can have it as 2 guns. But the best thing about Modulock is you could combine him. If you ended up with more than one, you could combine him and make huge, absolutely huge spidery figures. Now, the comic that introduced him actually was one of the better ones as well. Modulock basically turns up to Hordak, offers his support, and then basically turns himself into a Christmas present and just turns up at like the Eternia Palace in lots and lots of boxes, and they don't know what they've got, and then he builds himself from inside. But it's just so cool that you could take it apart and drop the gun and do it into all sorts of different crazy creatures. Now, what actually makes Modulock even cooler, let's just leave him kind of semi-assembled there, is they then brought out Multibot. Now, Multibot is a robot that I want to say, if I remember correctly, is actually invented by Modulock, because Modulock's a crazy scientist. And you can then combine these together to make, I've not practiced this, so I probably should have tried to come up with an idea of what I wanted to make to begin with, but again, it's probably not going to be the best of creations, but you could combine them to be even more crazy together. You know, stick heads on the side, do all sorts. So you could just go wild with as many parts as you could get. But that's Modulock, absolutely crazy horde villain. Really like it. And the first of 2 Masters of the Universe figures. I've always been a sucker for a figure with a grappling hook. I tend to collect them. I've always got loads and loads of figures with grappling hooks. There's Webster, there's Herc Armstrong, got this little cobra thing. But coming in at number 5 is my favourite figure with a grappling hook. And actually, he's not even got a grappling hook himself. He has a grappling hook pet. Now this is a Sector. He's an insect warrior of Symbion, and he is Mantor, and he is the Sector's equivalent of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's the wise Sector. He's the one who has his own secret missions, searching for relics of the past. He goes on adventures. He's a bit mystical. He's got his own version of the Force. It's not the Force, but comes with this cool crossbow, got his little antennas. He's a cool figure. Now, Sectors never took off. They weren't popular. I loved them, but I don't think anybody else really did. But I just love these figures. Their articulation was pretty good. They've got these nice bendy legs, bendy knees. He-Man figures, Master of the Universe didn't have bendy knees. But I like these belts and packs and straps they used to have, so he can stash his crossbow in his back there. Got a little pistol on the side. It's a mixture of fantasy and science fiction. Sectors was very cool, but what makes him my favourite, as I said earlier, with the grappling hooks is... stand him down actually. He comes with this. This is Rappler. And Rappler, like Webster, is a grappling hook where you can tie it up and then you take this bottom bit off. A bit worried actually, it's going to come apart. Take this bottom bit off and you can actually pull it up the string. And like Webster, it works. You pull it and it pulls up the string. And I think it's super cool. I like the creatures. I get why it was never popular. My kids didn't like them on the shelf where they could see them, so actually they've been relegated to a shelf in the loft. But yeah, the Sectors are super cool, and Manta and Rappler were my favourites. And I always tended to like the wise Obi-Wan characters in any kind of show, but I mean, these didn't really have a show that I saw on telly. I've only ever seen it on YouTube, but I did like him in the comics and he was my favourite. And I used to play with the Sectors a lot because I really like the glove puppets. Then coming in at number 4 is the coolest Masters of the Universe figure I have. This is Scareglow, the evil ghost of Skeletor. Look at that chest. Look at the way the rib cage is kind of glowing on there, and it really does glow in the dark. He really glows in the dark, really, really good. And has this cool cape, has this cool halberd. This is the only figure out of the lot that I didn't have as a child. This I picked up in later life. I think I was in my teens when I managed to track one of these down, because I was already, as a teen, quite keen on finishing the He-Man collection. And this guy is about as cool as they come. It literally glows from across the room. So I used to have all my other He-Man packed away. They were like either in the loft or under the bed. But this guy stayed out on the shelf for years and just glowed in the corner. And I always wanted this figure as a child. I was so intrigued at how it could be the ghost of Skeletor, when one Skeletor's like, he's kind of like almost like an undead creature skeleton thing anyway, and then on top of that it was from the future. Like, how did it travel back in time? And I remember it came out about the same time as Clamp Champ, and I just thought this one was much more interesting, and I just never got it. Could never find it on the shelves as a kid, and then took me years to pick up. But it is the best glowing toy that I've got. Got a lot of glowing figures. This is the best glowing toy that I've got by far. Super cool. The evil ghost of Skeletor from the future. Scareglow. Now, coming in at number 3 is an action figure with 0 articulation. I mean, you might be like, well, that is ludicrous. How can it be an action figure with no articulation? But it is. This is Gossamer. Gossamer is a cheeky looking Trobbit from Black Star. Now, this came from a car boot when I was little. They didn't know what it was doing. My parents picked it up. They thought they liked the look of it. I guess they must have thought it looked like Dumbo. And then it used to sit in the He-Man box, the Master of the Universe box. And there is Gossamer the Trobbit. Now, I do have some of the other Trobbits, but as you can see, they do not look anywhere near as cool as Gossamer. And they are 0 articulation rubber figures from Black Star. So Black Star's kind of like a precursor to He-Man. John Blackstar's an astronaut, gets lost in space, finds a planet with the Trobbits helping him, and then I don't have a Black Star, unfortunately, but I do have the villain, and this is the bad guy, and they have, you kind of clicked and their chests lit up. But I wasn't interested in these or any of the other ones I've got. This was my favourite, and my brother and I, we used to like hiding him. So what we would do is my brother would open a cupboard and this would fall on his head. And then my brother would hide it in a cupboard and it'd fall on my head. And you know, we'd put our slippers on, you put your slippers on, and there would be Gossamer at the bottom of your slipper just when you're in a rush trying to go out. And we spent years and years and years, and unfortunately we got too good at hiding Gossamer, and it would then be like a year before he was found. You know, you'd open a shoebox that you're not looking in, or you'd open a suitcase and there would Gossamer be. You'd find him on holiday and stuff. And now it's the first action figure that you see as you enter my house. It kind of sits on like almost like on top of a wardrobe, on top of like a skirting board. But yeah, absolutely cheeky face, ginormous ears, no articulation, but absolutely lovely little character, and full of character, but actually for me full of nostalgia, because it reminds me of my brother, and one day I will still hide it somewhere, and when he least expects it, and it's going to get him, it's going to fall on his head. Now, coming in at number 2 for my all-time favourite action figure is Zartan and the Swamp Skier. So there's Zartan with the Swamp Skier at the back. This I actually picked up a lot later in life because my Zartan is in pieces. So my Zartan, unfortunately, it's elastic band didn't last forever. There's Zartan, obviously he's got no legs there. But my one came from a car boot sale in the mid-80s, and we knew it was Action Force. We didn't know anything about G.I. Joe until I picked up Order of Battle one year from a comic shop. But we knew it was Action Force, but we had no idea who Zartan was. I'd not seen this in the shops, and it was right. He couldn't have been out very long. What he was doing in a car boot sale so early is beyond me. Someone must have been very naughty to have their figures sold off. Maybe they just got bored with them. But I always remember I played with him all the time. I really, really liked the Dreadnoks, and the Dreadnoks had started to appear in the Action Force comic, and this guy was super, super cool. But what I didn't know at the time was both him, and unfortunately there's what's left of the original swamp skier I had. I didn't realise he changed colour. We kind of were playing outside in the garden, and it was a really sunny day, and then suddenly he was blue. And me and my brother, we were like running, like, Mummy, Daddy, look, the figure's gone blue. And none of us had ever seen colour changing plastic before. So actually, that then just made Zartan even more cooler. And we wanted even more Dreadnoks, and I've been collecting the Dreadnoks ever since. And yeah, definitely my favourite. Now, I'm quite fortunate so that this one here that I bought later on in life has all of its bits and bobs. I do like making the swamp skier, but more importantly, this one comes with all of its paperwork. But just there is my proper tight with knee pads Zartan, and actually he's really cool. I mean, I have the classified ones as well. I have I don't have the Ninja Force one, but Zartan, absolutely excellent. He became a favourite Joe figure, and he was always, I mean, I had Destro, Cobra Commander, but he was always the leader. And when the Joes went up against anybody, they were pretty much always going up against the Dreadnoks, because I really like their kind of Mad Max feel to them. But there we go, Zartan. And then finally, my number one all-time action figure of all time. I've gone full circle and I'm back to Star Wars. It's a Star Wars figure, and it is a Man-O-Man. Now, this is, I'm going to bring it right up the front, the weirdest of the original Star Wars figures that they did. It's a creature. It's kind of like a head-hunting. You can see it's got heads on its weapon. It's a kind of like a primitive headhunter that's lurking in the background of Jabba's palace. Now, this is yet again another car boot find in the 80s, and as I've said in previous videos, I was still crawling around the floor playing with Star Wars figures well into about 88, and this is one of the last ones that I ever picked up. Now, I do not remember seeing him in the background of Jabba's palace. It actually took a while to realise that it was a Star Wars figure. I think I'd spotted that it said Kenner on it. But this is a Man-O-Man. Now, I really like it. It's a very, very flat figure. It's got this weird little stubby legs and then a weird little stubby tail. But it's just brilliant. It's got this weird flat mouth. It's kind of got these gill bits underneath, and it's got a very, very simple but effective pattern on it. Now, if I carefully take this off. Now, a Man-O-Man didn't just play with the Star Wars figures. He ended up being used in every single game. So all of my favourite characters from all my toys did tend to get mixed up into other battles and other adventures. But even then, as a teenager, I used to have him dangling in my room because I really liked that you could just hang him off things. And I went through a stage of hiding him in vegetation in our conservatory as a teenager and stuff. But a Man-O-Man, absolutely love him. My favourite, so favourite. So I sometimes try to pick them up in graded. And I remember treating myself to this many, many years ago. But I have this very, very nice graded one. And without a doubt, even though such limited screen time, my all-time favourite action figure, because it's just mental. I mean, look at those arms. Look, if I go like this, can we see how big? Look how big the arms are. I mean, there was nothing like it in Star Wars figures. I mean, the closest to it not looking like a normal Star Wars figure is probably FX7 with all its little spiky bits that come out. But this is just I just think it's the coolest. I think it's an absolute shame that they've not appeared in more. They were supposed to appear in one of the Clone Wars cartoons, but it never kind of got the artwork fit or the animation finished. I've kind of seen the rough draft of the episode because it was an extra, I want to say, on one of the Blu-ray special features. But a man, the coolest, and my favourite action figure of all time. I think it's super, super cool. But actually, if you're like me, choosing 10 figures out of your whole collection to be your favourite is really, really difficult. So I do have one more runner-up figure for, again, pure nostalgia value and the fact that it was one of the coolest figures that I had in the 80s. And it is this Action Force figure. So this is the Kraken. And it's from Action Force. It's a Red Shadow, it's a baddie. And Action Force is what what we originally had before it sort of became, they took the G.I. Joe line and used the Joes as Action Force. So it's not got as much articulation as your standard G.I. Joe figure, but this is what came before. And it's this kind of mutant frogman creature that lives in the lakes, I suppose, works for, I'm going to say Baron Ironblood. But what really, really sold me on this one is I really liked the web feet as a kid. I really liked the hands. But most importantly, this really cool trident gun was nothing like the blasters that my Star Wars figures had. And obviously, while it could fit in the hand, I always thought that was such a cool ability. He could hold the trident gun in his mouth while swimming to go and slay Action Force characters. I also like that it came with this really cool net. Now, my net's been played with to pieces, so it's very, very frayed. But what I liked about the original Joe figures, what I liked about the original Action Force figures is they were the same size as Star Wars. So I actually used to use the Kraken in my games of Star Wars because it looked like an alien. It was often used as a henchman for Darth Vader and used to wrestle Chewbacca. So there we go. My top 10 plus a runner-up plus a couple of honourable mentions, action figures of all time. Thank you very much for looking. Take care.